Dobro jutro. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Maxim. Thank you, James. Thank you for having us. Thank you for a very inspiring presentation, Daniels. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to expand a little bit on the topic that was opened up by Daniels, is how do startups, how do small and medium-sized enterprises drive today the trend of online trade, and especially in terms of export. At the end of my presentation, I would like to leave you with a better understanding of how this industry evolves. Some of you might even leave with a desire to go and effectively have their own startup and start their own businesses in online. If we look at globally what's happening in the SMB space, SMBs are very much a backbone of world economy. The International Chamber of Commerce globally says that 95% of enterprises are SMBs, and 60% of the private sector jobs are in the SMB segment. In Europe, the SMBs play an even greater role. Every 2 out of 3 jobs in the private sector today are in the SMB space. At the same time, what we see today is that, according to the same research by the ICC, more than 50% of SMB applications for trade finance are rejected. According to Gallup, 25% of Americans have thought about starting out in a small or medium-sized business, but effectively had a number of reasons why they didn't. Some of them quote that they're afraid to lose their steady income. Other people speak of the challenges of starting up. Some people say that the odds of success are very low. I'm sure that a lot of you here sitting today have thought about this at one time or another. The good news is that starting a business online and the barriers that you have for that have dropped significantly. Meet Irina, who started her own business a few years ago out of St. Petersburg with a starting capital of about $2,000. Today, she employs about 7 people. She's in the business of making, tailoring, and effectively selling wedding dresses. She does about 300 dresses annually, and 70% of her sales are outside of Russia. Ivan, a designer from a small village of Hodkovo in the Moscow region, started out in 2011 with, again, a starting capital of $1,800. Today, he does about 150 to 200 pairs of sunglasses made out of wood that he basically, again, sells largely abroad. Just a couple of days ago, we released the results of our 3rd survey that we're doing together with Ipsos, where we're asking 28,000 consumers in 32 countries across the world. What these consumers are telling us today is that 50% of online shoppers don't really care where the goods are coming from, as long as the price, as long as the quality, and as long as the actual good that they want to buy satisfies them. Many of these consumers today shop on very large platforms, Amazon, eBay, or AliExpress, and it is especially relevant for those countries where these platforms come from. There are a lot of SMBs today that sell their goods using these platforms. In some markets, buyers prefer to go directly to the startups or the small and medium-sized businesses, and these would be markets like the Netherlands, Poland, Czech, Hungary, and Sweden. If we look at what these buyers are buying today, then globally the leading category is definitely clothing, apparel, footwear, and accessories. It's around 46% of what today is consumed globally online. It is then followed by consumer electronics and travel. These are the 3 largest categories in terms of online purchases globally. According to the same Ipsos survey, today the largest exporters or the online sellers are China, followed by the US, UK, Germany, and Japan. They represent the big markets. If you will, most of the people here, or the countries that I guess most of the audience comes from the other markets that themselves can be placed as SMBs on that map today. What we would do today is take a closer look at a country that historically, wasn't very well known for export, and that country is Russia. If you look at the key export markets for Russia today, they're North America with about 42%, Western Europe with about 30%, followed by Asia with about 12%. All of this is data that we've gathered together with Data Insight, where we've done a survey of around 2,700 startups and spoken to a panel of experts. Our original premise was that the people who buy stuff outside of Russia should be either Russian-speaking or have some sort of connection to Russia. Our research today shows that it's not the case, and more than 50% of people who buy from Russian SMBs today do not have a connection with the country or do not speak the language. According to the same research and according to the Data Insight numbers, the number and the amount of export from Russia this year is going to amount to $2 billion. Just to put these numbers into perspective, the size of the Russian e-commerce is in the region of about $25 billion, and the size of import into Russia is in the region of about $4 to $5 billion. So it's good to know that Russia is actually exporting almost 50% of what it's buying. The other interesting fact here is that that number is growing at 32% on a year-on-year basis. Where is that growth coming from? What comprises that 2 billion and that 32% growth? Contrary to what most people buy online, as we've seen, it's fashion and apparel. What people buy in Russia is largely digital goods, games, content, music, online books. That's 35% of the 2 billion, and that's the category that is growing today at an average with about 10% year on year. Second largest category is travel with 26% and an annual growth rate of about 40%. What I find most pleasing and interesting is that the third largest category is actually physical or material goods. And when we talk about physical and material goods, we're not talking about the sort of things that you imagine when we speak of Russian goods. We're not talking of matryoshkas and samovars, excuse the sort of the traditional, if you will. But we're talking about wedding dresses, we're talking about sunglasses, we're talking about motorcycle helmets, we're talking about trendy covers for GoPro cameras, we're talking about custom shoes, we're talking about a lot of stuff that is actually produced today and manufactured by the small and medium-sized businesses. So another example, A4, was founded by Vladimir, who's the owner of that business, in 2011. Again, Vladimir didn't have an idea of how to make shoes, how to make custom shoes, and effectively started from zero. His business today employs about 10 people. They're selling to all over US, Europe, and Australia. The average price here is about $200, $250 per pair of shoes. Founded in 2009, Grain Shop was a small online retailer for outdoor gear. Today, they stock over 1,000 various items for fishing gear, hunting, various equipment, sports stuff and outdoors, as well as sell uniforms for security and military services. 90% of their stuff is produced in Russia, from St. Petersburg to Siberia. The company's sales in terms of what they sell internally in the market only account for 10%, with 90% of all that merchandise being sold abroad. A little interesting fact, we know that they've recently just supplied quite a bit of uniform for a couple of Hollywood studios, so we might even see their stuff in a blockbuster coming out later this year. New Woodman, a company founded by a guy called Artyom, 26 years old, based in Perm, in Russia. Started less than 8 months ago. Today has a monthly turnover of around $7,000 to $8,000. And they've proudly told me that Nick Woodman, the founder and CEO of GoPro, who they make these fancy covers for, today is carrying his GoPro camera in one of those covers. What do these cases tell us, and what are the main challenges that these entrepreneurs face today? What we're seeing is that delivery is still a big and a main barrier, if you will, for selling abroad. The high cost for small parcels, the challenges that they have in terms of customs formalities, the non-defined shipment time, and sometimes the unreliability of the providers that they use all cause major issues. According to the International Chamber of Commerce in Europe, 50% of companies selling domestically refrain from going global because of these sort of issues and because of excessive transportation costs. Experts state that if simplified custom procedures were introduced, another 60 or 80% of the SMBs would actually go global and start exporting. Companies and entrepreneurs in Russia, and in fact all over the world today, lack an understanding of the foreign markets. According to the same study by the ICC, many entrepreneurs quote the lack of exposure to information related to other markets as a key issue for not going into these markets. In the UK, for example, 38% of small business owners with no website say today they lack the technological understanding and the understanding of digital technology. More development and training programs in Globe is required to increase digital literacy among consumers and businesses. We, as an industry today, need to do more for the SMBs and enable them to go and be able to explore these boundaries and these markets outside their frontiers. In PayPal, we have focused a lot this year and are planning to do so in the coming 2017 in terms of educating people about both the buyer protection programs that we have, the seller protection programs, about free return shipping, and many other of our services. I'm pleased to that here in the Baltic states, PayPal today offers a full suite of its services, effectively receiving payments, sending payments, transacting, withdrawing money, and hopefully that's going to help raise the levels of growth about which Daniels has spoken in the previous presentation. According to our study, not a lot of these companies are very mature. More than 50% of them today are less than 3 years old, and there are very good reasons for that. It's hard for companies to stay in the exporting business and survive after about 3 years of doing that. The World Bank today says that across the top 6 EU countries, only 16% of exporting firms remain exporting after 3 years. If we look at online, the picture is different. According to a study done by eBay, more than 70% of the companies that have started selling online and are selling abroad using some sort of platform or doing that online are still exporting after 3 years. That's almost 4 times the percentage of online firms. We think that the opportunity that's out there is huge. According to the same research by eBay, today only 15% of SMBs globally sell online and only 7% export. And if I haven't convinced you to go and start an online business here today, then hopefully I've at least given you a better understanding of the opportunity before us. Thank you very much.